Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Louis D'Souza and Astrid Kaufman. Today is Monday, September the 23rd, 2019. It is 4 p.m. in New York time. That's 1 p.m. Los Angeles, 9 p.m. London, 5 a.m. Tokyo, and 6 a.m. Sydney time. Wherever you are, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy to be starting the week off with two of my favorite people talking about something that we've been talking about more and more about, Shin Jyutsu and the role that it can play in our everyday lives. I mean, I'm trying to buy into what you've been telling us, Astrid, that it's not a healing modality, it's not this special, it's not a martial art, it's just a way of living. I mean, that's not the way you say it, but it's a way of living. Am I right?
It's a way of harmonizing your energy.
Of harmonizing energy. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's a way of harmonizing your energy with the fingers and hands. Sorry, my mic. My mic went a bit berserk. I got very excited there.
With your fingers!
Yes, my fingers.
Well, actually, your microphone got really excited. It wanted more of that energy is what you were talking about there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And that's what it is. It's a way of tapping into that system that we have available. Which is really exciting because it's already available. We don't have to create it. It's always there for us. And if we know a little bit of where to place our hands, then we can do that. You know, at 3 o'clock in the morning when something happens and you wake up, who are you going to call? You know, you can't call.
Which I did, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, you did.
I did that.
Time zone. You know,
it works when you're in a different time zone.
Yeah, if you're in a different time zone, then good. You know, that's really good because you can call someone. You know, who's in it. But okay, so but if you aren't, then if you have your hands and you know what to do, then you can help yourself. And even if you do,
which I was able to do after I contacted you from a different time zone. That was the benefit because I knew you guys were awake. It was 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for me, but you were like 8 or 9 o'clock. So I figured, okay, well, I can reach them. And I got Louis first, and the information that he got from you, Astrid, and that passed back to me worked really well, by the way.
Okay.
I can't say that it eliminated let me, I'm telling the story backwards. Let me tell the story in proper sequence here so that it makes sense to listeners. So I woke up in the morning and I've been dealing with an issue over the last 3 or 4 months, something like that, of if I am in a horizontal position and I get up quickly, I feel dizzy for a few seconds. Or conversely, going to bed, I've been standing, and now I lie down, I get dizzy for a few seconds. I have a little bit of vertigo, if you will, a little bit of spinning. Mm-hmm. And it's not anything I ever worried about. I thought it was like maybe like an ear infection that wasn't going away, and I didn't want to go, get the antibiotic or whatever to knock the thing out. So I was using, what we know about law of attraction, focusing on feeling good and healthy. And I was making small amounts of progress. So I figured, okay, this is good. But after having dealt with that for a while, then over the weekend, I woke up and it was in the middle of the night and I was having trouble getting back to sleep. And I was experiencing that again. And I thought to myself, gee, Louis and Astrid ought to be awake by now. I wonder if I can send a message and get an idea from them of what I can do. So I sent off messages to you guys via Facebook. Louis got back to me first. Gave me a couple of holds to do. And Louis, I started doing them, and within 10 minutes, I was asleep.
Wow.
Just absolutely knocked out, and slept for like the next 4 or 5 hours. I mean, it was just like out like a light. Now, I can't say I've eliminated the dizziness issue, but my goodness, that was quick response. I mean, I did the thing holding the middle finger for a bit, and then I did the other thing with the neck and under the eye. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I did that second part more than a minute, and I was out.
Wow.
It was crazy.
You struggle to get back to sleep? Is that a...
Not always. Sometimes. A lot of the time I'm not. That used to be a big issue for me. It's not a big issue anymore. Most of the time I can either find something that I am appreciative or grateful for and focus on that, or I can just focus on my breathing and kind of a meditative stance and fall asleep that way. But there's sometimes I just have trouble. I just can't quite get there. And that was part of why I decided to contact you to see if I could get this thing off of my mind that had been bugging me. And yeah, 5-10 minutes later, I was out. Like
excellent. Really, really happy it worked because it really does work and it works quickly and works easily, specifically if you're in a more stressful, traumatic type situation, it works even quicker and easier, which is often what people think is the other way around. But the more you start working with the energy of the body instead of working more on the physical, like taking tablets or medication or whatever, you start finding that it's like a huge amount more powerful, more effective. Let's just use the word effective.
And the reason why is because you're actually dealing with the cause rather than the effect. So a pill will be dealing with the effect, the symptom. But when you start working on your energy, you're starting to release and correct the cause of what is causing, what's causing the issue in the first place. And that is why this can have such a dramatic effect on whatever you work on. And I'd be very interested to see, Louis, what the hold was. What was the hold that...
I did the first step of the dizziness flow, and then I said middle finger, those two.
Yes, but no one knows what that is.
Oh, well, I do actually, but the listeners don't know.
Yeah, of course we do, but can you just show us? And for those people who can't see it, can you explain what you're doing?
It's this way around, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually this one.
It is that way. Okay.
Yes.
So
and that is fantastic. So what we're doing is we're putting the right hand on the over the right shoulder, and the left hand is going on the left cheekbone for everyone who can't see us doing this. And that helps dizziness. That is part of what we call a dizziness flow, a sequence of holds that helps dizziness. But what I've also found it really good for is it helps stimulate the immune system as well. It helps rebalance the immune system. So I tend to use this one a lot when, especially when we're going into winter and I start feeling a little bit of a cold coming on or whatever. You can also use that for that, so to get rid of a cold, to stimulate the whole immune system. So I'm really glad that worked for you, Walt, because that's one of my favorite little holes there.
Well, not only did it work, it was great, but not only did it work, I found that if I positioned myself just so on the pillow, I could have both hands in position and fall asleep in that position. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that, but that was pretty cool. I actually fell asleep in that position. So I have no idea how long I held that hold, but it was a lot longer than I was conscious. I'll say that.
And you know something, Walt, that this works while you sleep. So
cool.
So, because it doesn't require your brain to engage in this, it only requires your hands to be placed. So if you fall asleep in this position, it's going to be working while you sleep. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. Yeah,
until your hands
like that.
fall away, it is working. You are actually giving yourself a treatment. So, of course, it's this is really great because I think I'll put this up as a post as well. This position. And say, yeah, great for sleeping, try it for insomnia or great for sleeping or whatever. That's really great.
Listen to this podcast for more information.
Yeah, exactly.
I also found that I was able to, this past sleep cycle, I was able to get myself back to sleep by holding the middle finger. In fact, I ended up holding two fingers. And I wanted to ask you to reiterate what I know the five fingers have a sort of a basic significance. They tie into God knows how many other systems, but there's a basic significance to each of the five fingers. So could you kind of reiterate what that is?
Sure. Worry, fear.
That's the thumb, four-fingered.
Anger. Oops.
A middle finger.
Grief and pretense or trying too hard. So worry.
So grief is the ring finger and... Okay,
sucking your thumb. Fear, you will do what I tell you to.
The four-finger pointing, yeah.
Anger.
Yeah, that famous middle finger.
Grief.
The ring finger.
That's grief on any level, remember that. And it's also anger on any level. It's sadness. It's all different types of things relating to grief. And pretense or when you're trying too hard to do something and you're not getting it done.
Okay.
Or when you feel discouraged, when you're trying to accomplish something and it's not working and you're not getting anywhere, hold little finger and you come back to yourself and it's all about less efforting as well. So
It's the law of attraction, letting go. You know,
Yeah.
it's very much.
But the middle finger is particularly interesting because look where it is. It's in the middle of the other fingers, so it's perfect balance. It's the great harmonizer, sometimes called the great harmonizer.
Okay.
So it harmonizes all elements. So so it's in the middle of all these fingers of all these elements, and it also acts as the sort of balancer between the two sides, between left and right side. So it could be the finger equivalent to the mediator, which I call the crossing energies. So the crossing energies from left to right. So it just balances the whole being. Okay.
Okay.
And it's just a really nice thing to hold. It's also really good for allergies. I've known people hold their middle finger when they've had allergies, and those symptoms reduce significantly, so they can cope with things.
And when I mentioned that I had been holding, and the two fingers that I've been holding last night were the middle finger and the ring finger, so the anger and the grief fingers. And I kind of did that without really giving any thought to it, so I'm wondering if maybe I'm kind of getting into the flow of it or something along that line. But I had been it's significant because I had been noticing lately that I had been dealing with not feeling really good. And I couldn't put my finger on why I wasn't feeling good, other than the usual LOA thing is, well, I'm not focusing on stuff that I really like. And that was true, but I couldn't understand why I was breaking a pattern. I was moving more toward all the stuff that didn't feel good, and I was feeling kind of angry about it and kind of pissed off about life and so forth. I said, why? There's nothing going on. What am I responding to here? Where's this coming from? Where am I drawing this from? Well, I started last night just holding onto those fingers again, fell asleep doing that. And this morning I felt better without having done any meditation, without having done anything.
You put your finger on it. Actually,
I put my finger on it.
2 fingers on it.
2 fingers on it, right.
Fantastic. You see, you don't have to really identify, oh, I'm feeling extremely sad or I'm feeling extremely angry. It can be a mix of all these emotions that we experience, you know. But for you to experience that, to experience the middle and ring finger, so the anger and the sadness finger, of course it's going to be really powerful, you know, whichever 2 fingers you hold, but particularly those 2 for you at that moment. So it's kind of like in Law of Attraction, we've got this emotional guidance system of 22 steps, but here we've got the emotional guidance system of our hand, our fingers, you know, worry, fear, anger, grief, and efforting, trying to, pretense. And you can use that, and you can hold all your fingers, and you're giving yourself the complete treatment. So you have now had your first experience of, hey, this works. So what are you going to do about it?
Well, the most important part of it for me was that I noticed that it had worked. Because I realized how easy it is to have, you know, you do something as simple as holding on to fingers or a hand or whatever, and then you don't connect any kind of change that might have happened later on with the fact that you were holding your hand or holding your fingers. That's kind of symptomatic of what we do on a much larger scale. I had an interaction with somebody on Facebook who was complaining that she can never manifest anything. I said, look around you. You manifested everything. You just didn't notice. And that's it. We just don't notice. It's the noticing that is the big part.
And what is interesting is that when people are in constant pain, say, and something happens, they come for treatment or they do self-help or whatever, and all of a sudden they are not in pain, sometimes they don't notice that they are not in pain.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Isn't it?
Well, sometimes they fall asleep or...
Yeah, but it's that... Actually, you know, after treatment, say, they come in pain, and then I ask, you know, do you still have the pain? Actually, I don't. You know, just
surprise.
Just forgot about it.
Right.
It's wonderful, you know.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful.
They'd moved on so much further than no pain into somewhere else, and they're focusing on
harmony.
That. So, yeah.
I think it also points to the fact that, at least at some subconscious level, we really do believe that all of life should be in perfect harmony. So when we get there, it's not a surprise. It's not a shock, because we, on some level, we think that we should be there all the time anyway. It's like,
default,
what took so long?
by default, we are there. Anyone who is visibly in disharmony, by default, is in harmony. By default, we are. Our being is perfect and in harmony.
So Astrid, I'd just like to break this down, because there's a lot of confusion when you come to the subject. There's supposed to be harmony all the time, okay, and then there isn't harmony, okay. So when we say there's harmony all the time, we're talking from a source perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
And when you are saying there's disharmony, and harmony mixed, then you're talking about the duality world where we live in, where when we know what we don't want, we have a better time, better idea of what we do want.
Yeah.
And if you want to know what a master is, it's just somebody who spends less time going from what they don't want to what they want. So, when you're talking about that perfect harmony, I don't know. I need to come up with a word talking from source now. Okay, now we're talking from duality. It's like a little switch. Because when I was talking like that to somebody the other day, they kind of like slapped me through the face. Oh, but we're always supposed to be in harmony and all the rest of it. And they were changing the topic from discussing it from a source perspective, and then they were bringing it down to duality, and then they were trying to. Everything I was saying was wrong, because they were knocking me around from speaking to a different perspective. So I said, hang on a second. When we're speaking from source perspective, everything's one, everything's perfect, everything's in harmony. And when we're talking about duality, then we're going through the whole contrasting when you know what you don't want. And a lot of the time in the physical universe, you can, once you start study the law of attraction, you can start appreciating how much time you can be spending in a harmonious state like source.
But that is the same with Jyutsu. If you practice every day and you are your own testimony, as Mary Burmeister said, be your own testimony. Don't believe what I say, but just experience it for yourself. Practice it, be with it for 30 minutes, an hour a day. And it's very true what you're saying, because depending on your reality, you're not going to see harmony or disharmony. You're going to see it from your own perspective. But what I was referring to, by default, we all have that spark of life, which comes from a bigger place than we are, a bigger place than what our human beingness is. So it's always perfect. It's always the spark of light that is within us, that we can tap into and that we can access through what we do, either with Jyutsu and or the law of attraction, our intention or our focus, what we want or what we don't want. So yes, I experience when I practice Jyutsu every day for half an hour or more, I experience a very harmonious flow of my day. And when it's the same process, so when something happens and someone does something that is not what I want them to do, then of course, I go into I don't want that, but then my awareness is, I'll hold my middle finger and I will focus on what I do want, and that is to be in harmony, or to be in harmony with what is around.
Not to put your nose in someone else's business.
Well, that too.
Focus on your own.
Yes, absolutely. And that is actually quite an important point, because my reality is my own, and how I feel is me, and I can't feel what other people are feeling. So if I just focus on what is happening with me, then it's much easier, isn't it?
Plus, I've also reminded myself over time that on those occasions where I tried to mind somebody else's business, it usually didn't work out the way I wanted it to anyway. And even if there was some miracle where it did work out the way I wanted it to, I still didn't feel good afterward. So it came down to one basic thing. I could be spending all this time basically spinning my wheels, trying to get somebody else's life in order, but my own life was a mess. So I was basically not cleaning up my own mess in order to mess with somebody else. And when I looked at it that way, I said, wait a minute, there's something really wrong with this approach. I got to change this approach. This doesn't work for me at all. I got to clean up my own mess first.
Mm-hmm. And you hold your little finger, because that is trying to...
That's efforting.
When you're trying to, that is just not going to work. Trying to for me, or trying to for someone else. And that's a nice way of putting it, Walt. Yeah.
Well,
let go and let God.
Yeah. Well, it's the way that I found to really convince myself it was a good idea not to mess up by messing around with somebody else's life.
Do you know what I find fits in beautifully, Walt, with this concept is what is the greatest gift you can give anybody? And that is your own happiness. So,
okay.
When you're in a happy place, your vibration is such that you can raise other people around you to that higher vibration. So it's the greatest gift you can give anybody without putting your nose in their business.
In fact, I actually even use that as a way to remind myself to keep my nose out of their business by just rejigging it, so to speak. Saying what you just said, but saying it a little bit differently, which is when I raise my energy up, when I put myself in a higher, happier vibration place, I give everyone else the opportunity to raise their energy to the same level. In other words, I even take away from myself the claim that I am going to raise them up. Like, no, I'm too busy trying to get my own stuff together here. I don't need to spend any time trying to fix them. You know, that's up to them what they're going to do, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's a little reminder for myself.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen that little film, black and white film that's on YouTube called Validation? Or I think it's called Validation. I've got it on.
I don't recognize it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's about a guy who works. He validates tickets, parking tickets, and he's always got a smile on his face, and he's always complimenting people and saying how great they look, and you know, he makes people feel really good, and that's why they always come and validate their ticket at his counter, always. But then he meets a girl, and he really likes this girl, and she takes driving license photos. But you're not allowed to smile in your driving license photo. So he wants to smile at her. So he has this, you know, he smiles, and she says, don't smile. He just can't get her to smile. He can't get her to smile. And then he meets someone so he becomes really, really, really sad because he can't get this girl to like him. And whatever he does, whatever he does to try and make her smile, she won't smile. And then one day he goes to the park and he meets this lady in a wheelchair, and she's just really sad because her daughter doesn't smile anymore. And he takes a picture of this lady, and he gets the lady to smile. So then, anyway, you need to watch the video, but it's so cute. And then all of a sudden, there's lots of people going to have their driving license photo taken, and they're all coming out with a big smile. And the driving license photo has a person with a big smile on it. So he goes and finds this person who's taking these pictures, and it's this girl, and she's got a big smile on her face. And then it's a happy ending because basically the lady in the chair in the park was her mother.
It's her mother,
and yes, and she said she'd been really sad because her mother didn't smile anymore, and he made her mother smile. And happy ending. And
that's nice.
Oh dear, he raised the vibration of so many.
He did, yeah.
He helped people allow them to raise their own vibration.
Even better said, yeah.
Well, yes, but his own vibration was, so it's a really, really nice movie, and it's such a great movie in terms of Jyutsu and the law of attraction as well. It's just one of these real gems that, you know, should win an Oscar as far as I'm concerned. For short movie.
That would be fun if that happens one of these days. Wouldn't it be great if a feel-good movie actually won Best Picture? I mean, that would be astonishing, but it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting for it. I just go enjoy the movies that are good, feel-good movies, but you know, just one of these days it'd be kind of fun if it happened.
I haven't seen The Walking Dead. A lot of people talk about it. They say it's what do they say about it? It's quite uplifting or something.
I've heard that.
Dead?
Yes, yes.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
it's really quite uplifting. It's interesting because I see in a lot of martial arts movies some really uplifting scenes about character and, getting down and working through your stuff and all the rest of it. So, the movie's often playing with the contrast. And some are much better than others doing it.
Well, all movies play with the contrast one way or another. It's just a question of how well do they do it in a way that continues to help you suspend your own disbelief and enjoy the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I watched Green Book recently, and that was based on a true story, and it's all about relationships and building relationships between people with two very different worlds and in two very different worlds, and they sort of come together, and then they learn to appreciate their each other's worlds, and it was such a great film, and it was nominated for an Oscar, I believe, but it didn't win. But it was there's lots of great movies out there. I love movies.
It's lovely when there's a movie that comes along that does have that good feel to it without sending you deep into the contrast. Because everybody wants to send you deep into the contrast. And usually they're kind of dismissed, movies like that. Although Louise and I saw one over the weekend, which came from your country. The Downton Abbey movie came out. And we went to see that. And, that's very light entertainment. I mean, the biggest crisis in the whole movie was that the Downton Abbey staff weren't allowed to serve the king and queen because the king and queen staff were there to serve. I mean, this is like the big crisis of the movie.
Sweet, yeah. Well, it's really popular in the States as well, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard that overall worldwide they did $31 million the first weekend, so that's a pretty good start.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good start.
But,
I want to go see it. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, definitely you have to see it. It's worth it.
Oh, yes.
If you're a Downton Abbey fan.
The series, you see, so.
Yeah, if you're a Downton Abbey, if you're not a Downton Abbey fan, don't bother. You won't understand what's going on. You'll say, "What is this all about? This is crazy." But if you're a fan, you'll definitely enjoy it. No doubt about it. But I love it when those films come out. A lot of them don't get much attention at all. I mean, if Louise and I were to name our top 10 films, a lot of people wouldn't know like half of them. They would never have heard of most of them. But we love them. One of our favorites also has a British theme to it. It's the story of the author of Peter Rabbit, the Peter Rabbit books.
Oh, Christopher Robin. Yes.
No. Miss Potter.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The other is story.
That's really, sorry, I got them confused. Oh God, how embarrassing! I'm going red. You can't see that, the listeners, but I'm going red.
We'll have to send you to the Lake District.
Yes, Beatrix Potter. That is a wonderful film.
I love that film.
It's Renee, right? Renee.
Yes. Renee. I can't remember what her last name is, but yes. I think that was the best British accent by an American artist ever, because it didn't sound like she was an American artist. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
She was good, but the film is lovely because the worst crisis is her love interest dies in the middle of the film, which is pretty bad, but it doesn't last very long in terms of the sequence of the film, and the rest of the film is just joyous.
Yes.
It's just a wonderfully joyous film. So that's one of the films that's if we're having a tough day or whatever, that's one of the films we'll pop into the player just to, help lift our spirits, because it's such a nice, warm, good feeling film. Yeah.
Mine is Forrest Gump.
Love Forrest Gump.
Really nice
one of my real favorites is Meet Joe Black. I just love that movie.
Yes, I've seen that one recently again. Yes, that's a good film too.
What is it about the Meet Joe Black movie that you like?
You've watched it, so you know it, yeah.
Oh yes,
yeah. I love all those crazy one-liners. Yeah,
yeah, you had a few of them.
Why did you choose me? Because you meet the bull.
Yeah, that's right.
Your relationship's got about as much passion as a pair of titmice.
Oh no! This is now going very far away from...
Astrid, welcome to the true meaning of LOA today, where tangents are our middle name. I mean, we just do tangents constantly on this show. So, yeah, it's actually very unusual for us to stick to a topic for 60 minutes. So.
Well, yes. I mean, we have been quite good in the past, but...
Well, also, on the times when you've been on the show, we've been intently focused on your subject, so we weren't going to deviate very far anyway. But see, now you're becoming more of a regular, so now you get to experience
Yes. And honored I am, indeed. So, yes, and when you're watching a film, that's a great time to practice Jyutsu.
Yes, there we go. We can tie it in.
Oh, yeah, we can tie it into anything. But I do a lot of practice when I'm watching my films, either at home or when I'm in the movie theater. Great time to just hold your fingers and just feel good when you're watching a film.
I mean, if I move my camera a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, Louis.
We lost your voice.
Yes, we lost your voice.
Still can't hear your voice. Did you pull a plug out?
I think he's.
I think he's just kind of off in his own world.
There we go.
Oh,
here he is.
We were concerned.
You move the laptop and you pull out the USB port. Something.
There you go.
So try again. Saying my one hand is under my arm here, and the other one is holding there.
Mm-hmm.
This just feels so comfortable,
and
it also helps your voice if you're holding like that. So if you've got some stress in the voice, or you're trying to clear something like I'm trying to do at the moment with my throat, so you would just hold like that. It's very simple.
Basically, you place your right hand on the top of your upper arm. And you place your left hand on the top of your right upper arm. So you cross your arms and you place your hands on the top of your upper arms.
Thanks, Astrid. I forget about the podcast listeners.
Yes.
It's interesting, too, because that hold, as you're calling it, is really, for most people, nothing more than just folding their arms.
Yeah.
And from a body language perspective, that's usually interpreted as being aloofness, or I'm indifferent to what it is that you're saying, or I am resistant, or whatever. But that's not the way it's looked at in Shin, which is really fascinating.
Well, throw that whole body language book out the window is mine.
Yes,
once you start doing Jyutsu, you look at it in a whole new way.
Yes, you look at body language is a very different...
a very different animal.
Yes. Because after all, what one is doing here is I find this a very useful hold for emotional upset. So whenever I watch a movie or a series or a soap, then whenever someone is very, very upset, usually a woman, she will always fold her hands like this. So cross the arms and place the hands on the upper arms. And it's basically to calm herself down. It's a very normal, natural position to calm yourself down, to kind of clear the breathing, to clear the digestive system, to release tension in the back. It does all of that. And it just calms everything down. So
now, it's often accompanied by rapid foot patting, but other than that... Tap, 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 tap. I am so upset with you. Tap, 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 tap.
I didn't quite know what you were talking about. Well, yes, until the foot calms down.
Until it calms down, that's right.
Yes. But it usually, when someone is actually in this position, that will calm down a lot quicker, I think. So things will calm down a lot.
Do you know what amuses me, Walt, is because I often had a restless leg. And, somebody would say, oh, you've got a restless leg. And I said, yes, but you know what the restless leg is doing? And they'll look at you strangely. And I said, it's helping calm me down. That's why I'm doing my restless leg.
It's basically excess energy.
Concept.
So we do these things like, tap or move the leg or whatever, because there is excess energy that we need to get rid of. And by doing a hold or a self-help hold or, some exercise, we can get rid of that excess energy as well. So there are different ways that the body can deal with excess, an overload, or a depletion of energy, needing more energy.
I wonder what exactly does that mean, an excess amount of energy or a depletion of energy? Depletion, I guess, is a little bit easier for us to kind of identify with, but and I guess we can all identify at times like, yeah, it feels like I have an excess of energy, but what does that actually mean? I mean,
well, if I were to describe the excess, the overload, and the depletion, not enough, if we have a look at a river and we look at the energy pathways in the body, in our bodies as rivers, and when the energy flows harmoniously and optimally, the energy, so the water in the river is flowing nicely. There's not too much or too little. It's just, there's no damming, there's no blockages. It's just flowing nicely. So what happens when there's too much rain and the river, just overflows everywhere? Well, that's what can happen in the body as well. There's just too much energy flowing into somewhere where it's not flowing through, and you're not getting rid of it. It's just stagnating. So it can stagnate as well. The river can stagnate. There can be too much. It can be caused by a blockage. So anything that happens in that river can happen in our energy pathways, or there's not enough water. So there's not enough energy supplying whatever needs to be supplied. So not enough energy is not supplying the body, or is not supplying the organs, or is not supplying whatever. Too much is oversupplying, so overloading something. So then we want to rebalance it. We want to balance it out. Does that make sense?
I'm wondering if the overload part, if the excess energy part is another way of saying I can't handle the acceptance of that level of energy. I need to handle a lower level because that's all I can handle at this moment in time in my physical existence.
So, well, let's talk of it from an Abraham Hicks perspective.
Okay.
If you've got source energy that's infinitely powerful,
mm-hmm.
and you have a lot of resistance in your physical vibration interpreting machine, the physical body,
mm-hmm.
and then you are cutting off the power of source to flow into the physical, into your
mm-hmm.
body, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be considered to be lack of energy.
Sure.
Tired, fibromyalgia, ME, whatever the labels the doctors pull out of their thumbs. So, when they give you a label like that, it just means they don't know what you've got. But
which is 90% of the time.
I'm sure there's some doctors who might be listening to the show.
Well,
the honest ones, I think, will say, I mean,
you do get good doctors.
Well, I'm not saying that there aren't good doctors, but even a good doctor will acknowledge, 90% of the time, they're not dealing with something that they learned out of a double-blind study. They're drawing a little piece from that double-blind study, and a little piece from that double-blind study, and a little piece from that one, and they're piecing it together and saying, well, I think that'll probably work. And they'll say, okay, let's go with that. But they also, on some level know, well, that was never actually tested in the double-blind study. Those things were, but this particular combination wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way most prescriptions are written. Most prescriptions, they don't know for sure how stuff's going to interact. They just, they've had prior experience with it, or, it seems to make sense that if you have this having that kind of interaction and this having that kind of interaction, they probably play nicely together. But they don't actually have double blinds to show all of that. There aren't enough double blind studies in the world to cover all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's the danger of, when you start off with one drug, then that's okay. You still have control. But when you start off with one drug and it causes effects, and then you try and prescribe another drug to deal with those effects, and then you start having a cocktail, and you just don't know what the hell is going on. Excuse my French, but you just
especially
don't know what.
There are some patients that I've heard about who have like 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 medications that they're on.
Yeah,
medications that were added on to help deal with the previous medications that didn't do as well. It just becomes endless.
This is the danger. This is the danger. That's when you go down that rabbit hole, and it becomes very difficult to get out of it.
Oh, no kidding.
Because, that's, yeah, anyway, let's go back to...
Sorry, we really went off on the tangent there.
Totally. But that's cool. The cool thing is I can actually remember what I was talking about and I can continue where I left off.
Yeah,
Because I was always terrible at that. So I'm getting better.
Definite improvement there.
I remember having conversations, just to sidetrack again, when I was a young kid at school, and I was a nerd kind of, and I drew another nerd to me, and because there were two of us together, the other nerds came, and we had this great nerd group which kept me hugely entertained, which I loved. And there was the conversation we were having, you know, talking about this and this, and then my mind would go somewhere else, and I would say to them, what was I talking about? And then they'd have to fill me in what I was talking about, and then I'd be able to continue where I left off. And this happens so often, they just like so scatterbrained. But over the years, and chess was one of the things that really helped me to focus, because I enjoyed it so much that I landed up being able to play for about 3 hours solid, which was just unbelievable for my span of attention at that stage. You know, it was about the only thing that could keep my attention. But going back to source energy, so source energy, you've cut yourself off with focusing on what you don't want, so the stream of source is not able to flow into your physical body, therefore you feel weak. You've cut yourself off from who you are. So let's say the opposite has happened. You're totally in alignment, but you're not ready for it yet. So you've got this huge amount of energy surging through the body and it doesn't really know where to go. Well, let's say something in between. So a restless leg would just be having more energy than you can really deal with. And it's just wanting to go somewhere and you don't really know what to do with it. So you haven't learned to channel it into doing good things in your body. It's just sitting there and you're just shaking your leg and you want to let it out. So you start seeing that all these ailments which the doctors have perceived, they've all got a good side to them. They've all got a positiveness to them. And if you listen to the Abraham Hicks on health and healing, you will find thousands of examples where they take cancer and brain hiccups and a whole lot of things and they just turn them around, that the person says, oh my God, I didn't realize the advantage of having this. I didn't realize why I chose to give myself this so I could have that advantage. So, you know, you really start looking at it very differently. So when you've got too much, it just means that your alignment to source is actually quite good, but you're not quite sure how to deal with it all. And it doesn't.
That's the way to say
it. One of the things that I this is a fun way to describe how Jyutsu can make you feel, or can help you feel when people don't know anything about it. Like when I'm doing a quick introduction to Jyutsu, and I say to people, so if someone calls you up, you take a phone call, and someone calls you up and they say, "You won the lottery," and at first you think. You say,
yeah, right.
You mad. But then it turns out that you have won the lottery. It's real. You've won $1 million or whatever it is that you've won. You've won a lot of money. And it's true and it's verified. And how on earth is that going to make you feel? Are you going to feel absolutely depressed and, down in the dumps? And I don't think so.
Some people will. I tell you, there are some people who will find a way to be depressed by that.
Yeah, but...
I don't mean to take away your point. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's incredible how we can put ourselves in a state of a frame of mind that just makes us feel so bad, and equally we can get ourselves out of that state so quickly just by refocusing. Whatever it takes to refocus. And when you discipline yourself, even just by using the mind to, create just a infinitesimal shift in your focus, how different that can make you feel, because that's where you get the relief. If you just refocus a little bit, it doesn't take very much to refocus. And of course, the Jyutsu comes into play if you need some extra help. But just using the mind and your shift in focus.
Well, I think that's one of the advantages to the Jinshin approach, because if I just take my fingers and hold them like that as I'm falling asleep, it actually gives me a point of focus because I can feel my hands holding each other. I can feel my left hand holding the fingers of my right hand, and it's very palpable. It's very immediate. It kind of blocks other things out and becomes very, very simple to focus on. I don't have to talk about lack of efforting. Forget the little finger at that point. I mean, I'm just focused on the fact I can feel those fingers. I feel them very, very strongly. It's a great focusing mechanism.
Yes, that is a very good point that you can actually focus on because you are actually doing something. You're holding a finger, so you're right, Walt. That's a very good way of describing it. That you start with that focus, and then the energy takes over after a while. That's a very good way of explaining it. Yeah.
Well, they often say meditation is good. So meditation is a stilling of the mind. And one of the first things a lot of meditation practitioners teach you to do is to follow the breath. And which gives the mind something to do instead of focusing on what you don't want. So now you've got to focus. So when you start looking at the book Initiation, Walt, it talks about... it talks about meditation in a long sentence, which she said she couldn't focus on. So one of the things I like saying to lower my resistance and do a meditation is be still and know that I'm source. Then I find that takes me to different places, be, source, still, etc. So then I say be still and know. Then I say, be still. And I often think of the being still as being still with the thoughts. And then you go off just to be. And it's really, each one of those is quite a different vibration. And then I start off again, if my mind wanders too much, I start, be still and know that I'm source. Be still and I know. Be still and be. And the thing I love about it more than anything, okay, is that I made this for myself. No, you won't hear it from anybody else. It's just something I did for me. And because of that, I own it, and that owning is very useful too.
No doubt about it.
And the nice thing is that even, I'm very lazy when I want to relax and practice. I'm very lazy. And the reason why I love practicing Jitsu is because I don't have to think even about the breath, because as I say, I am very lazy, and I just have to place my hands in a position, whichever position, whether it's holding the fingers or a finger or on the body, and then things start happening very quickly. And then my breath changes. So if I'm, say, because a lot of us are shallow breathers, especially when we get stressed. When you get stressed, you forget to breathe, and that's why you get even more stressed if there is an acute situation or something going on. So yes, you can focus on the breath, but you can also focus on your ring finger or a finger, or place your hands, and it changes your breath, it balances your breath, it harmonizes your breath. And that's in essence what we're doing, is harmonizing the breath. So we can do that consciously, or we can do it by other means, which is to practice Jitsu.
That's a pretty cool thing.
And you don't have to engage the mind in that. But equally, if you do engage the mind like that with what Louis has been saying, and just listening to you, Louis, and holding my hands in this position.
I love that position.
And that position, because we haven't talked a lot about the center of the palm, so let's talk about that in a minute. But just doing that position and listening to your words, the energy of my body already resonated with those words, and I just went, oh yes, yes. Oh God, let's not make a Harry met Sally or Sally met Harry out of this. Sorry, Walt.
No, that's quite. Hey, it's an American film. I can't say that.
It is an American film. One of my favorites too.
Very famous one.
Let's talk about the center of the palm, because we haven't really talked about the center of the palm. The center of the palm is the access to all the energy function. So it's if you place your fingers without any pressure on the center of the palm, you are harmonizing the worry, fear, anger, sadness, and trying to's all at once. Because this is the shortcut. If you don't have time to do all of them, you can go here. You can go to the center of the palm. That accesses that oval of that main energy, that main river that goes down the front as you exhale and up the back as you inhale. And so this is very powerful, and you can do it by placing your palms together, or even, that is what happens when you pray. You put your palms together, and that's why it's so powerful. You're accessing all your 144,000 energy functions at once. So you can fold your hands, you can put your hands in prayer, you can place your palm in the center of place your fingers in the center of the palm. Very powerful.
Louie's doing something that's a combination between Jyutsu and karate is what it looks like, but like he's
well, actually, this works on the energy in another way. So yes, there are many ways that you can access that. But center of the palm is really calming, and actually, center of the palm is also really good for fatigue, and also good for depression, despondency we call it. So I had a student who was from Russia, and she was very depressed being here, being away from her family or whatever it was. And she said, she knew a little bit about Jyutsu, and she said, what can I do to feel a bit lighter, to feel a bit better about everything? And I said, just hold the center of your palm. And a few days later, I saw her, and she had a smile on her face, and she said, I feel a bit lighter, I feel a bit better, So constant, regular practice and application of the method does start having an effect. It was really sweet, because she was a very sweet girl, and it was really, I felt really bad seeing her in that state. So her energy had shifted a bit.
I think this episode is supposed to have a lot to do with movies, because when you said from Russia, with love came into my mind.
James Bond.
And earlier on, right in the beginning, when Walt said, who are you going to call? The Ghostbusters was popping into my mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I think we should have our own Oscar ceremony here.
It was fascinating. I took my 4-year-old, and we were watching The Addams Family, and she was so enthralled with this hand. Oh, my God, this hand was just so cool. Like
Thing.
Yeah, Thing.
Oh, right, the Thing, yeah.
She was just, oh, man. And she can't stop talking about Uncle Fester now.
That's so
she
sweet.
really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That's funny to me, because I grew up with the Addams Family on television, and first of all, when it turned into a film, which was many years ago now, actually 2 films, that alone was a little bit surreal. But then to have Thing turned into his own character, I mean, Thing was sort of a character during the television series, but the character was on for maybe 10 seconds at a time. It never had its own role, so to speak. In the movies, it was like its own character with its own character development and its own plot line and everything else. It was really quite a development, shall we say.
I didn't know there was a TV series on it. I've just seen the first film, and I saw there was a second one as well. Yeah.
That television series ran from, I'm going to say, the early 70s to the early 80s here in the U.S. Yeah. It was among the genre known as the Saturday morning television shows, which was the shows aimed at the children. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, sometimes people will say, "What's that thing you do?" Jin. Oh.
Jin something or other.
And we've in the last episode we talked about going on a 5-day class, but what I also wanted to talk about before we finish is that you don't have to go on a 5-day class to start reaping the benefits of Jin Jitsu and learning about it. There are many different levels that you can that you can access. So, the book that I always recommend is The Touch of Healing by Alice Burmeister. It's got all the information, but presented in a really nice way. And actually, the information that is in The Touch of Healing is the information that we teach in the self-help classes, which also are presented from Mary Burmeister's self-help books, Self-Help Book 1, 2, and 3. And so you can go on a one-day class presented by a Jyutsu practitioner.
Which both Astrid and I teach.
Yes, so I teach them here in Wiltshire in England, and Louis teaches them in London. And there are, around the world, there are practitioners who teach them locally. So that's a great way to learn about Jyutsu and start really getting an idea of structured practice with structured flows and what it's all about and why it works and how it works. And then there's also other places where you can find information. I've got a lot of information on my website, flowsforlife.com. And then you can also access the 5-day class if you feel up to 5 days of this information and also practical experience, because you get a treatment every day. So if that resonates with you, then there are lots of levels, and Louis is available for questions, and so am I. And
but you're missing one thing, Astrid. You didn't.
Sorry.
You didn't tell people that you've just launched a short little course on your website that they can go on.
Oh yes, well, yes, that's right. I've got a mini e-course, as I call it, and it's called In the Flow. It's a hands-on self-help mini e-course, and it gives you an overview with in very sort of simple and sort of personal stories, and how you can use different holds, self-help holds effectively, for what they can work, and just gives you a sort of an introduction into this wonderful art.
It's probably the only one of its kind in the world.
Well, it's
I don't know. I've never seen any others. So.
Yeah, it's the thing is that it's available online, so you can go to my website, flowsforlife.com, and purchase it, and you've got lifetime access, and it's so you can learn at your own pace, and it's available to you wherever you are in the world. So that's a really nice way to just get a really just a lovely, well, I hope lovely. I've done videos, so every module has a video to show you how to do the exercises properly, and I just love the fact that it's getting the message out further afield, and helping people learn at their own pace, and sort of creating that first step.
That's good. I hope that we're also helping to get the word out with what we've been talking about here on the podcast. I do want to remind people also that if you're not yet a subscriber to the podcast, please become one. Very simple to do. Go to the homepage of our website, loatoday.net, and right at the top of the page, you will find instructions for how to subscribe using your particular device. And once you've subscribed, come also to YouTube and subscribe to us on YouTube. In case you would like to actually see us. In fact, guys, I realize now that because YouTube can be accessed through services like Amazon Prime and so forth, I had the rather disquieting experience of watching myself on my own television doing the podcast. So we're going to have to dress up the show a little bit here, because we're actually accessible on people's televisions now.
Wow.
But the point, of course, is that you want to subscribe on YouTube, and then once you subscribe, make sure you hit the little bell character there so you get notified every single time that we publish a new show. And so with those two thoughts in mind, thank you guys for talking more about Jin Shin. We'll have to
Thanks, Walt. Thanks,
bring
Astrid.
that in. Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
We'll keep we'll keep exploring this as time goes on and expanding the topic and making it part of our Law of Attraction family of topics on an ongoing basis. So thanks, guys. Thanks to our podcast listeners as well. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.